Hey there, it's Ben Thorpe with Farm Equipment Magazine. I'm here with Ken Zuckerberg from CoBank. Ken, we're going to sit down here today and talk a little bit about a presentation you gave at the recent 2020 Dealership Minds Summit. And a big thing you were talking about was innovation potential for dealers in the industry right now. So I kind of wanted to start our sit down just by asking, why now? What are the reasons dealers should look at innovation in their business model right now?
Well, first, Ben, thanks. It's wonderful to be with you today. And when we think about why now for dealers to consider changes to their business plans and their strategy, there's several factors that are impacting the future growth and earnings prospects for the equipment dealers. First is a downturn in the crop cycle, which is approaching year 7. Based on our analysis, the average crop farmer is either losing money, seeing margins compress, or both. This delays new equipment purchases, that decision, and it can also lead to a preference for used equipment over new. That trend we've actually been monitoring and seeing accelerate in the past few years. Second, while competition isn't per se a new factor, dealers that are captive to the publicly traded equipment manufacturers, they face the same pressures that the public companies face, i.e., how do you grow top and bottom line in a difficult environment? There's many layers of this onion that we could peel back. Consolidation of farmers means fewer customers, but those customers are bigger. The bigger customers tend to have more negotiating leverage. And there is a trend towards some eventual direct purchases of equipment by farmers. So all these factors sort of weigh into the why now.
Great. Yeah, and so maybe let's unpack some of those farmer-specific ones, because I know there's a lot that's hitting farmers right now in the industry, and I know some of that might get translated over to dealers. So yeah, what are some of the more key things there?
You're absolutely right. And when we think about the crop cycle, kind of unpacking that a little bit more, so low corn and soybean prices coupled with rising input costs are really the critical factor putting pressure on farmer income, cash flow, and working capital. If we look at USDA figures, and the figures I'm referencing are consolidated for both crop, dairy, and livestock, the trends are actually the same, but these figures are compiled and consolidated. You look at where things were in 2011 versus 2019, and cash receipts are basically flat. However, production costs are up about 10%. That's not sustainable, and that is a factor that really is putting a lot of pressure on the margins. Looking forward, will this be better or worse? Well, all of what we were talking about happened and was happening before COVID. So we have the COVID wild card to throw into this mix. And then in addition, healthcare and pension costs are both rising. So that creates some additional stress on the farmer bottom line.
Yeah, all happening right now. Really tough stuff. So with all that in mind, what's going on for the farmers? What are some options you think dealers can look at right now, considering what's changing in the market? What are some changes that they can look to make in the future?
Well, when I meet with companies, I always like to start with there's usually 2 sets of 3s. So the first set of 3 would be whenever times are difficult, you can 1, do nothing, 2, do something, or 3, do something more meaningful and transformational. So when it comes to the equipment dealers and agriculture in general, I tend to think about doing something meaningful and transformational. Now within that, lots of different options, and I know we talked about this in the recent article you wrote and the presentation I made, which is consolidation, mergers and acquisition. That certainly is a logical first option for dealers to think about in this environment. A second option would be the expansion of products, services, scope of services, whether it be expanding your rental business, your parts business, precision services and offerings, perhaps more customized farming and application services. Those are all, again, a logical second option. Option three, and I've given this a lot of thought, option three for our discussion here, I would say, would be transformational, something out of the box and very different from what we've talked about. So Ben, I think you and I had discussed Home Depot and Lowe's as interesting companies that address multiple needs for consumers. So the way my mind works is I think about why couldn't we see that in input and dealership distribution. So not to say I'm ready to turn the industry upside down, but I just want to give you a thought process. Can you imagine bringing input retailers, the crop input retailers and dealerships under one roof to where you walk in and you have equipment to the right, you have seed, genetics, science straight ahead, and you have chemicals, crop protection chemicals, and fertilizer to the left. I think about this as a sort of a useful one-stop shopping idea for the farmer. And for the distributor, I think about having staff that are employed all year round with an ability to cross-fertilize knowledge and expertise. And also another thesis or theory I have is that for farmers to embrace the digital transformation of agriculture, which fills the pages of every ag magazine every month, whether it's called ag technology, innovation, or precision. Look, the industry expecting a farmer to just adopt something new where the value proposition is not fully explained, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I think the ag equipment dealers and the retailers and the farm supply cooperatives have a golden opportunity to borrow something from another industry, and this would be the Geek Squad. So the Geek Squad for agriculture, where you have people, Ben, that are closer to your age than my age, that actually can help us old guys understand what the deal is. Why couldn't you have the dealerships hiring more, non-ag data experts to help bridge the gap? I think that's a fantastic, interesting opportunity, both for jobs, for expertise, for sharing knowledge, and not to say that those captains of farming that understand the methods and science of farming, we're not talking about changing that. We're talking about taking that institutional knowledge and marrying that with advanced data, analytics technologies, and helping both the farmer, the distributor, and the system be a lot more profitable and financially and environmentally sustainable. So I think that's a huge area, but I do realize it goes under that transformational big idea category.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. No, and that does sound like you are trying to change the industry just a little bit, Ken, but maybe, it's for the better there. And I appreciate the shout out to my generation being, good for something there.
Well, I'll tell you, I think, we often make the mistake of not looking at that which is right in front of us. And, part of what keeps you young is to always expand the mind and think. And I guess what I would say, by all means, I'm not a data scientist or an expert in technology. I consider myself more a student of it. But, you think about the fact that the mathematics behind artificial intelligence came out in 1950, 57, I believe. And it took all these decades until the computing power caught up with it. That to me is fantastic. So let's celebrate that. Let's bring it together. Let's also recognize that the institutional knowledge of the American farmer is pretty damn good. So it's not that technology conflicts with that or displaces that, but rather enhances that. So, this is sort of a little bit more philosophical. And maybe, Ben, I am trying to change the industry a bit, but for the benefit of the industry, not for myself. I just think that, what I have a opportunity to do is to connect some dots in a interesting way, at least to provoke thought and, watch this industry regain its excellence as I know it has.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. No, very well said. Something I wanted to kind of double back on here. We talked about, or you mentioned that something dealerships can look at to kind of change up their business model is adding other services or expanding on them, like rental, custom application, precision. Of those, which one do you think is maybe the best opportunity the dealerships should look at? What is the greatest potential?
Well, I think the precision side is probably there. And I think that if you think about the digitalization of agriculture as precision ag, which quite frankly has been around since the 60s and 70s, take precision ag, add in the data intensive tools, technologies, approaches, and analytics, and then you have sort of an output that actually helps do what you've read about and what I've read about, sort of farming, utilizing more precise methods to farm more efficiently, profitably, proactively. Ben, I may have told you that perhaps I am a contrarian in the world. I don't think necessarily going for gross yield should be the quest. I think maximizing profit per inch of farmland harvested ought to be the end goal, not gross yield, but profit per acre, profit per inch. And I think that the promise of emerging technologies is that. Now, some of the issues, because it's logical to ask what have been the bottlenecks over the past 6 or 7 years on this particular journey I've been on. Well, I think that first and foremost, there is not a universal operating system or connected platform. Interestingly, I think Microsoft's announcements in recent months, including a partnership with Land O'Lakes, basically takes what I wrote in a research report in 2015 and brings it to life. Take a real data company with enterprise capabilities to help, if you will, connect the system. Then there's a lot of interesting, innovative technologies across the field, both on field, below field, above field, that need to coordinate together. And I think AGCO and Deere and CNH have done great work thus far, as have the input companies. However, there's a disconnect. Not all these devices or technologies or systems talk to each other. So when I think about that, and I know I'm putting a lot out there at once, but if we try to simplify that, if you can think about hardware and software together, driven by the knowledge of which farming decisions can lend themselves to more precision, I think that's the opportunity here. And I think, there's not just one way and one path, but I think, having some formative foundational changes in agriculture to be able to envision and create a system like this, I think that all falls into the, precision side. And I think it's also very, very important when we think about all the changes, let's think about what's not changing first. And what's not changing is the customer, the farmer, wants good, honest, thoughtful advice about what to do and the equipment or the inputs that get them the outcome. So I just think that close relationship that both equipment dealers and input retailers and farm supply cooperatives have with their customer, that part's not changing. You always need good advice. If something happens legally, yes, you might go to an online legal service, but you're going to hire a lawyer. I think about that the same way. You need that trusted advice, and that part provides, I think, an opportunity here.
Mm-hmm. Well said. No, definitely. And I like the example of the lawyer. I think that holds true. Awesome. And something that I liked the way you ended on the Dealership Mind Summit. You ended with thinking about the future, how dealerships can keep their business forward thinking and ensure that they're on the cutting edge of what's coming in the industry. What are some of your thoughts on that? How can dealerships really do that?
So Ben, it's difficult, right? People don't like change, and we all get very comfortable with what we know and a level of understanding, because uncertainty creates anxiety. When I meet with companies and boards of directors, I usually mention that if there's only one piece of advice I could ever give, it's to ask the hard questions together safely, meaning that it's important to start out this journey with, does your business model embrace the future or does it defend the past? And if it defends the past and ignores what's happening around you, that's fatal. And I say that because the market leading company in film and cameras was Kodak. And Kodak actually understood digital photography, but they didn't want to cannibalize their existing film and camera business. And Kodak declared bankruptcy and restructured. There's a number of other examples that I think I provided in the Dealer Summit. My favorite one, and I guess it's infamous at this point, is the story of Blockbuster Video and Netflix. So Blockbuster Video, this was perhaps been before your time, but those of us that remember going to the store and getting, first the video and then the DVDs, all of a sudden there was a market that Netflix decided DVD is better technology than, the videotapes. Netflix was able to deliver that on mail order, and then Netflix went into streaming. So Blockbuster had the opportunity to buy Netflix, but they chose not to. Why? Because they didn't want to cannibalize their existing storefront video rental business. Today, Blockbuster is no more. Nobody has any sort of day-to-day thought about Blockbuster Video. I think there's one store left, and there were probably more than 1,000. And meanwhile, Netflix is one of the most valuable companies in the world, something over 200 billion of market capitalization. So going back and looking at this case study, Blockbuster didn't want to change. The irony is they actually had the opportunity to buy Netflix, but didn't. And here Netflix is a market leader in that category. So be careful about what you ignore, and try to think forward and embrace the future.
Definitely. Great. And I do remember Blockbuster Video. I went to one or two, and that was just before they went under. I have a few memories of picking up VHS tapes. I do, just so you know, Ken.
If you and I were smart, we would get the trademark, and we would print up shirts saying, "Be careful of what you decide not to do." Blockbuster Video. So
there you go. Capitalize on that. Okay. All right, Ken. Well, do you have any final wrap-up thoughts for dealers who are looking at all you said about innovation, and they're thinking, all right, maybe I do need to make a change? Where should they start looking? So
the first step is to talk about it and to be open and to have a forum internally for open exchange of ideas. Then, Ben, you have to get the young people at the dealership to be able to present their views without penalty of being yelled at or fired. So I think the first step is changing the mindset and thinking. Go to a growth mindset. Think about embracing some ideas that perhaps are not so comfortable or seem a little bit crackpot. Have that dialogue, have that discussion, embrace, think, consider, and then take a step back as a dealership and say, what do our customers want and what do they need? So then spend the time interacting with the customers, sharing some of the internal discussions in a very soft and thoughtful way. And it's interesting, that opportunity to collaborate with your customers, I think, is the future of any business in general. And remember that once upon a time ago, there was a view that people, and especially women, would not buy clothing online, right? That went over its head because the industry decided and found a way to be able to make ease of returns and make the shopping and the customer experience very strong. And what do you have? You have both women and men that buy all kinds of products online. And as you know, the joke is back in the 80s, Amazon used to sell books. And now Jeff Bezos, with his head on the body of Arnold Schwarzenegger with very large muscles, basically sells whatever he wants. So, I think we should look at these lessons and case studies that are right in front of us as examples of where this industry can go and stay relevant to their customer.
Wonderful. And that's a great way to end it, I think. I thank you, Ken, for sharing your thoughts here. This has been wonderful.
Ben, wonderful visiting with you. Hope to speak again soon.
Definitely. And for anybody watching, you can read more about Ken's presentation in the most recent edition of Farm Equipment. And I hope we talk again soon, Ken. This has been great.
Have a great day.
You too, Ken.